Republican lawmakers push a new plan to tighten control of the border, expanding state power to enforce immigration law.
Well, there's no greater threat to the country than what we're facing today with the cartels.
But the proposal could put the state in conflict with the federal government. We dig into the plan and the court battles likely to come. It's supposed to be one of the big races on next year's ballot, but so far, no one is challenging Ted Cruz for Senate. We look at which Democrats could step up and what's holding them back. Our investigation found nearly 1 million Texans can't renew their driver's license due to unpaid tickets. Now, 2 state lawmakers are pushing for change, why their plan is also facing backlash.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Some Texas lawmakers want to tighten control of the border with a new state law. The proposal discussed at the state capitol Thursday could set the state up for a showdown with the federal government. As Capitol reporter Ryan Chandler tells us, it's the latest effort for those who feel the feds are dropping the ball.
We've never seen the border in the shape that it's in.
The urgency is clear.
Well, there's no greater threat to the country than what we're facing today with the cartels.
But the responsibility is contentious. The Texas Senate on Thursday considering a bill to take border enforcement into state hands by creating a new state-level offense for illegal crossings.
The authority has been manipulated by the federal government, forcing Texas to try and come up with solutions.
Texas sheriffs say both federal and local law enforcement benefit from state cooperation.
So we rely on the state resources as well as the Border Patrol resources, because there's time that they're first responders before we can get there, and vice versa.
The southern border is the federal government's purview, but some lawmakers here argue it's now their problem. That's why they filed a series of bills to test the limits of state power and perhaps invite a federal challenge.
It's an inherent responsibility that's in law, codified in federal law, who has a responsibility for that. And so I just don't see how the state will be able to overcome that.
At least not under current law. And that just might be the point.
I think Texas has a tremendous argument right now in federal court on the way that the border has been handled by this administration, leading us with very little choice but to try and make changes to the federal law.
Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
As you heard, supporters of the legislation expect a legal challenge if the bill passes. Ryan spoke with an immigration expert to get insight into how the bill conflicts with current federal law and why the legislation could lead to a Supreme Court case.
These are all issues of preemption as to what state laws are preempted by federal law. And it's a 1976 Supreme Court case called DeCannis, which has defined all the limits of preemption. And the most important limit is that if the federal government already has occupied a territory, like it has already said that it's a crime to cross the border illegally under federal law, states cannot have a law in that field. It's been preempted by federal law.
These are not dumb people filing these laws, right? In many cases, they are lawyers and they understand all of the arguments you're making. But they still think that there's some benefit to trying to pass these laws. What do you? I mean, I think they're kind of inviting a federal challenge here. What is you think the end goal here?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, these are not dumb people. They're extremely smart people. And what they're doing is they are advancing talking points on an issue for which the country is highly polarized. And Texas sort of has become the ground zero of the polarization on immigration politics. They're walking straight into that. But they may also be testing the limits that, look, if we invite people to challenge this will go back to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court may, in their mind, have changed the composition since 2012. And they may hope that they will get some judges which will be most sympathetic to Texas's provision in this case.
The bill was left pending. It's not clear when senators on the committee will vote on whether to send the legislation to the full Senate. Also on Thursday, senators on the State Affairs Committee heard hours of public testimony about bills that would put new restrictions on drag performances. Senate Bill 12 would ban drag shows at businesses in the presence of anyone under 18. A violation would lead to a fine of up to $10,000. Senate Bill 1601 targets things like drag queen story hour for children. It would strip state funding to municipal libraries that host events like that. Supporters say it's about protecting children from being exposed to sexually explicit content. The bill's author laid out his position early in the hearing.
Drag shows are sexually explicit and expose children to issues of sexuality and identity that should be reserved for adults. And while drag shows have received the most media attention, Senate Bill 12 is not limited to this type of sexually oriented performance. Drag shows today may be replaced by other types of harmful performances in the future, and SB 12 applies to all and will protect children from sexually oriented performances in general.
Most of the people who came to testify were opposed to the bills. Some of those who spoke challenged Senator Hughes' belief that drag shows are inherently explicit.
This bill should be more concerned about the content of the performances rather than the sex or gender of the performers. None of us want to have children at our drag shows at the gay bar at 11 p.m. on a Friday night, and there are already laws preventing that from happening, but we do want to continue our events like drag story times that are intentionally modified to be appropriate for children. Drag is simply a form of art, and like any form of art, it can be produced by many different kinds of people and be modified for different kinds of audiences.
Committee members did not vote on the bill after hearing nearly 4 hours of testimony. We should point out that the bill is on Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's list of priorities, which means it's likely to pass in the Senate. Texas is less than a year away from the March 2024 primary, but right now, no Democrat has stepped up to challenge the Republican Ted Cruz. Why challengers are being cautious, and who could step up? Judges in Texas could soon have broader power to deny bond for people accused of violent crimes. We look closer at the support and opposition to the plan and why voters will have the ultimate say. Right now, thousands of Texans with unpaid traffic tickets cannot get their driver's license renewed. How a new bill could end that policy, why critics of that proposal are pushing back.